Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here today to discuss this important topic with the distinguished panel that we have here. I would like to give a brief introduction to the idea of social entrepreneurship before I open it up for discussion and questions. At present, there is no rigorous definition of social entrepreneurship, although I know Roger Martin, among others, have been calling for one. So I will try to outline some broad principles and invite my colleagues to add on as they present. Very generally, social entrepreneurs are concerned with using business principles to create a social change, but they're primarily concerned with the returns to society as opposed to just profits. Although many social ventures are not precluded from the idea of profits, microfinance, most public foundations, and some innovative charities would fall under this umbrella. While the term social entrepreneurship is fairly new, the concept is well established, and the numbers show that it is too big to be considered a fad. For example, just the top 10 global microfinance organizations control over 172,000 employees, have 46 million borrowers, and about $11.5 billion in their loan portfolios. It's also important to recognize that social entrepreneurship is a global phenomenon and not limited to developing countries. In 2009, about 5.5% of US GDP was from the nonprofit sector, along with about 10% of the workforce. And the value of the volunteer work performed by these organizations is estimated at around $173 billion. Social entrepreneurship has also had a wider impact as many new structures have emerged around the idea of creating a positive social impact, such as public-private partnerships. B Corps or benefit corps aim to also create this impact on society and publicly report on their social and environmental performance using established third-party standards. Although the designation is fairly new since 2010, there are already over 500 B Corps in 60 industries with over $4 billion in revenue. The wider impact of social entrepreneurship and social thinking can be seen in the way these principles are being adopted in large companies due to changing consumer attitudes. According to a recent consumer survey by Deloitte, 90% of millennials say that firms should be measured by more than profit. Over 8,000 companies have signed the UN Global Compact to promote fair labor standards, and today almost all Fortune 500 companies give CSR reports. There are also visible role models such as Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, and Warren Buffett, and an increasing percentage of brand value is derived from intangibles, which gives an incentive to think about things like brand and reputation and championing various causes. As a result of these changes, there has been a great degree of innovation, collaboration, and experimentation for many quarters. So let's take a look at the long-standing challenge of providing access to education and various approaches that have been made possible with social innovation. Most of these represent not only novel solutions, but a novel diagnosis of the problem as well. Here are a few pictures, and let me explain what some of these are. Akshay Patra is based in India, and their approach is providing a hot, nutritious midday meal to keep children in school. They reason that many children leave school and take menial jobs because of hunger, so they ensure that food is provided. Their state-of-the-art centralized kitchens prepare and deliver over 1.3 million meals a day in 9 states, and food is in keeping with local preferences. Room to Read believes in providing education through access to libraries and schools. They've published over 700 books, many written by students in their programs, and have also built 13,000 libraries and distributed 11.5 million books thus far. Of course, most of you would know about the celebrated one laptop per child, which uses low-cost laptops to allow students to learn and collaborate. And we have also multinational companies like Nokia, which have developed a series of apps on their cell phone network called Life Tools. which have been downloaded by over 50 million people worldwide and allow people to learn a variety of skills like conversational English and access relevant information on health and other topics. And very interestingly, many more offerings have been created and co-developed with people from the communities being served. So I think what's interesting is all of these models have used a different artifact, a meal, a library, a laptop, and a cell phone to deliver on the same goal of education. These approaches come at vastly different price points and look very different, but they all satisfy the same principles because of their clarity of mission, creating engagement, providing a great user experience, and providing transparency. They've had to collaborate with a variety of players and understand the unique needs and desires of the community. So there is opportunity with this approach created for multiple players, as well as a direct benefit to society. So taking these concepts from concept to execution was only possible with many hands and many heads and many hearts. It requires mentorship and celebration of innovation. These examples show us what is possible, but they also illustrate the challenges of effective collaboration. Despite its promise, social entrepreneurship is also susceptible to many of the same challenges of management and governance as the corporate sector. Social value creation does not automatically follow from periods of high growth or from the strong financial support of other parties. If we look at the case of India since 2000, there's been an explosion in the number of NGOs. There were about 144,000 registered societies in 1970. By the year 2000, there were 1.1 million. By 2009, there were an estimated 3.3 million NGOs, one for about every 400 Indians, so more than the number of schools or healthcare providers. In addition to private donations, government provides about $3.5 billion of support to these against a national health budget of about $4.2 billion. But there is very little correlation, in fact, a negative correlation with this growth and India's Human Development Index rankings. And these results were despite the fact that this period included some of the most robust GDP growth rates in India's history. A similar pattern holds true in many other countries. Peter Drucker prophetically warned that an enterprise that fails to think through its impacts and responsibilities exposes itself to justified attack from social forces. We can see this tension being played out in our society today. Just a year ago, we saw the extremes, both the spontaneous tributes outside Apple stores following the death of Steve Jobs to the crowds of the Occupy Wall Street movement. At one point last year, Apple had more money than the US government, so this conflict is not about money or envy, but the norms of behavior that people expect of their organizations. As we look for solutions, let's not dismiss the enormity and complexity of what the social sector can deliver. There's another example that I find particularly inspiring from India as well. For me, the Golden Temple represents the extreme of what engagement and collaboration can do. I've not been there myself, but I was fascinated with this article from the New York Times about a year ago. Until it was recently overtaken by Akshay Patra, it was the world's largest free lunch program. It's also one of the cleanest pilgrimage sites in India. 80,000 people are served every weekday, double that on weekends. 3.3 tons of lentils and 250,000 pieces of bread are prepared daily. People of all faiths are welcome to eat and volunteer in the kitchen. In all, that means about 37.4 million people are fed each year. To give you a reference, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees helps about 34 million people a year, and they've won the Nobel Peace Prize twice. So let's look at this in management terms. Imagine that on any given day, you couldn't target your customers, you couldn't recruit your employees, you weren't sure which ones would turn up, and yet you still had to offer the same quality of consumer experience 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. People move dynamically between being volunteers, diners, and donors. Those who eat and those who serve must value the experience and feel good about themselves in the process. How many of us can run operations under this level of complexity, where any mistakes are immediately visible and we can't blame technology? To me, this represents what the organizations of tomorrow must do. They must be inclusive, adaptable, inspiring, and they must deliver. As Drucker himself once said, the bottom line for the social sector organization is change lives. It is the social sector that may yet save society. Thank you, and I would like to welcome Vicki Escarra.
Good morning. How is everyone? Asleep or still dancing? One of the two, I guess. At any rate, it's great to be with you all, and enjoyed hearing your presentation, Deepa. I have spent time actually at the Golden Temple, and it's really quite spectacular if you've not had a chance to spend time there. So I'll begin by saying it's an honor to be with you all. And to quote Peter Drucker, management is doing things right, leadership is doing the right things. I would offer to you, in managing great nonprofits, you really need to do both. The organization itself must be extraordinarily effective, and you must run it like a business. But your product must be game-changing, and your team must be driven, strongly driven by a mission. So being a leader who can articulate and sell the ideas to employees, to individual and corporate donors and strategic partners is really essential. I spent 30 years at Delta Airlines, which some of you know through reading through the program. And I'm sure some of you are wondering, what would an airline executive know about running a nonprofit? And I would offer, if you've taken a look at the balance sheet of the U.S. airlines, you'd know that I actually am quite an expert at running a nonprofit. So, at any rate, I started as an entry-level employee and worked my way up to being the third from the top individual at Delta Airlines. I actually ran all the operations for the company around the world, all the airports, all the call centers, all the flight attendants, all the cargo operations, 52,000 people. And then I was promoted a week before the events of 9/11 to be the chief marketing officer for the company, which included classic marketing, but it also included revenue management, asset allocation. And so it was a really very, very difficult time, and I can tell you I certainly learned a lot, having been in the airline industry, around how to produce revenue generation and how to create shareholder value. I moved into the nonprofit sector with this real notion that I wanted to take all the learnings that I had in the private sector and find a way to give back. And from day one, I was really guided by this firm belief that Peter Drucker said that unless commitment is made, there are only promises and hopes, but no plans. Strategic planning, then publicly sharing those plans with your boards, your key stakeholders, actually kind of puts a flag at the top of a mountain that serves as a real rallying cry, and all the more important, I would offer to those of you who are involved in nonprofit work, to really lead that kind of movement. So I brought these same private sector principles to the leadership that I directed at Feeding America, which when I joined the organization was known as America's Second Harvest. So what did we do? We actually developed a strategic, very focused, outcomes-based plan for the organization. We had goals that were measurable, and we actually exceeded all of our goals over the 6 years that I was the leader there. We rebranded and relaunched key marketing strategies for the organization. In the worst economic time in the United States since the Great Depression, the organization tripled the revenue. So we grew from fundraising at $28 million to over $100 million. We saw, from a PR perspective, our hits go from 500 million in 2006 to 13.5 billion in 2012. And we moved the organization from being number 13th as far as US nonprofits go to being number 3, an organization, as is measured by Forbes magazine, an organization that is $1.3 billion in revenue. We did all that, but the important thing in conjunction with all that tremendous growth is that we also doubled the amount of people that we served over that period of time, from 25 million Americans to 37 million and 14 million children. So we got all the metrics right, and we really served the clients that we were focused on. So it was a really great time for me. I'd share one other thing about what we did at Feeding America, and that is that we won over, in the middle of a very, very partisan Congress, we passed 2 huge bills through Congress, actually overturned a presidential veto by a 3-to-1 vote, and won a $60 billion bill that helped provide children with healthier foods in the public school system. So as I look at Opportunity International, which is now kind of my 3rd career, if you will, and I'm looking at you, Richard, smiling, you know, we're beginning in the same way. It's an organization that has a 40-year history. It has a great track record about providing microfinance services to more than 4 million people around the world. You all know certainly that clients today that we serve are struggling. 3 billion people live on less than $2 a day. I'll say that again. 3 billion people live on less than $2 a day. We've got a great foundation, but there's a lot to be proud of, but there's a lot more to do to make this a really vibrant organization. We're doing what I've done throughout my whole career, and that is we're listening, we're observing, we're planning, and we're partnering. I would offer to you that Opportunity International is one of the best kept secrets in the nonprofit world, but not for long. Not for long. And we'll do similar work that we did at Feeding America, and that is tapping into marketing strength, and then as well fundraising potential. I just began my job actually 3 months ago, so I'm trying to finish up 2012, which is a fast pace. It's a little bit like running a sprint and a marathon all at once, and finishing 2012, and then really thinking about 2013 and what do we want to do. But clearly we're going to do the same things that we've been doing, and that is planning, metrics, measurement, and marketing. But I would offer as well that it takes a lot of courage to do this kind of work, and we were discussing this last night. Courage is really important in the work that we're doing. Like Peter Drucker, I believe there's no worse waste of time than doing things without a goal in mind. And we should plan on doing what works, but also all along making fundamental changes to the world and the work that we're doing. One thing that works for Opportunity International is the model of empowering the world's poorest by leveraging and reinvesting funds so that every $1, this is really, I think, impressive, every $1 invested over 5 years actually gets a return on $6. So if you invest $1, 5 years later, you'll get $6 in every dollar. And we've got a short video that I'd like to share with you that really gets at that subject.
Worldwide, more than 1.5 billion people live in extreme poverty. Traditionally, this is a problem that has been addressed by charity. People donate money to those in need. Gifts provide food, supplies, and services. Quality of life improves, but only temporarily. Once the gifts are used up, the need returns and the cycle repeats. There is a better way. Opportunity International provides access to savings, small business loans, insurance, and training that change lives for good. For 4 million people, this is their opportunity to stop the cycle of poverty. Women are poor in disproportionately greater numbers than men. 93% of Opportunity's loans go to women. To be eligible for a loan, a woman joins a trust group and undergoes 4 to 8 weeks of training. She learns how to create a business plan, budget, and save money. Trust group members pledge to guarantee each other's loans and support one another's businesses. 95% of loans are successfully repaid. And when a loan is repaid, another woman receives a loan and the chance to work her way out of poverty. Trust groups have proven to be an effective grassroots approach to tackling poverty. Most clients experience economic as well as social and spiritual transformation. With opportunity, a woman grows her business, which increases her income. She can then feed her family more nutritious meals, pay her children's school fees, improve their housing, put away money in her savings account at the Opportunity Bank, and purchase insurance from Opportunity to reduce her family's risk. She is able to hire her neighbors, giving them a chance to provide for their families. Through it all, she feels an increased sense of confidence, hope, and empowerment. When she pays back her loan, another woman gets the same opportunity to improve her life. Opportunity changes everything. You can be the change. Give now. www.opportunity.org.
So just an example of my comments around great nonprofits operate like businesses. We also have a slightly non-traditional financial model that I think you'll find intriguing. It's actually a private sector model underneath the umbrella of a nonprofit. Opportunity International employs what we called a stacked capital structure, which helps us achieve our goal of reaching scale to support social change. We can't survive just on philanthropic dollars or just commercial capital. We actually need both. And as a global social enterprise, we believe that grant funding is critical to fueling the engine of our mission and necessary to leverage other types of dollars. We have nearly $800 million at work. We have a quarter in equity. We have a quarter in small-scale deposits, which are in our banks. We have a quarter in philanthropic capital and a quarter in commercial capital. And as you can tell from doing the math, we have $3 of leverage for every $1 of philanthropic capital invested in equity in 50 microfinance organizations that we work with across the world, and we're in 24 countries. What we do is provide services, loans, savings, insurance through banks, 14 of which we own, actually across, as I said, 24 countries. And while banks are capable of generating earned income, they oftentimes need startup and expansion funding. Philanthropic capital helps us to scale up our operations quicker and with more efficiency. Savings mobilization accelerates capital formation. And in the microfinance world, we've learned and we know that profit maximization on its own can undermine those that we seek to serve. Opportunity International has been at the vanguard of demonstrating that commercial-oriented microfinance banks can, and in fact do, maintain their mission. As banks, we don't necessarily generate the returns that would leave some of our capitalists happy with the ROI. But when you look at the ROI of our organization, leveraging the capital that we recycle with the philanthropic dollars, the return is very impressive. Again, $1 will equal 6 over 5 years. We've accomplished this by taking on banks where leaders are social maximizers. Our donors and staff are not solely focused on returns for opportunity, but also on the emotional returns of our clients. When you look at our interest rates, and there's been a lot that's been written in the press recently about microfinance, and that many of the microfinance organizations are charging exorbitant interest rates. Ours are between 2% and 4% a month, and so we use those monies to really wrap around and provide services like leadership and training to our clients, always walking this tightrope of profitability, recognizing when you own 14 banks, you're under the watchful eye of the regulators. So it's really actually a kind of interesting world that we live in. We actually consciously chose to invest in banks that are in some of the toughest countries in the world. And we did this because we believe we're adding value to the industry by entering markets that might otherwise not be served. Because of this, we're more conservative than we might otherwise be. You certainly understand that the macroeconomic situations in many of these countries are very unstable. There's a lot of civil unrest, and there's a lack of basic infrastructure because we're taking on some of the poorest clients in the world that generally have no credit history, no collateral, if any, and very limited education. So we need to know how to run businesses with banks that operate in the black and with fundraising that supports our ability to continuously provide loans and incremental services to those people that need them. But I would say despite all those challenges, and there are many when you're involved in so many banks around the world and with so many products and services, despite all those challenges, it's important to note that 93% of the loans that we offer to women and 95% of our loans are repaid. So not only do our clients have access to capital and financial services, but they also have access to transformation. They have access to leadership training, financial coaching, education, preventive health, communication skills, and family management. We deliver, in essence, a private equity approach to microfinance to help our clients grow into true entrepreneurs and community leaders who ultimately will pay it forward. Peter Drucker once said, "Every single social and global issue of our day is a business opportunity in disguise." Our clients are the entrepreneurs who are tackling extreme poverty, one of the biggest social issues of our time, and they're tackling it head on. Just a couple of examples and I'll close. There's Comfort Apaya, who is a social entrepreneur that I met in Ghana about a month ago. She's working on solving education problems in this country in a very impoverished neighborhood. Today, with loans of $3,000 and then another $4,500, she is educating what 3 years ago were 2 children in her home. Today she has 800 kids. She's employed over 40 of her neighbors, and she's sending all 4 of her children to university. I love that, thank you. Yeah, that is real change, thank you. And then there's Ingenui Nairobenji, probably butchered her name, of Rwanda. She is one of many small farmer clients who, with the help of microloans averaging $300 and the support of our ag finance infrastructure, is producing more food to feed families in her own home, in her community, and in her country. Since working with Opportunity, she's hired 5 workers to bring her crops to market. She's established Opportunity Savings Account and crop insurance to keep her from slipping back into poverty when disaster strikes. So, together with clients, Opportunity International is building businesses in some of the most challenging environments around the world to support people who need economic innovation most. This hybrid approach requires a commitment to everything Peter Drucker believed in: management, my measured goals and results, an eye on the greater public good, and a constant reevaluation of what success looks like and the best route to get there. Thank you. Oops. Yeah.
I would now like to welcome Bernhard Katzy of the Entrepreneurship Akademie to the podium, or wherever you like to be.
Good morning. Do I have to operate this?
Yeah.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to share 2 observations and 5 statements for discussion with you this morning. We have started the Social Entrepreneurship Akademie in Munich, which is basically the 4 universities in Munich, plus the 4 entrepreneurship centers. So it's 8 organizations. We are operating as a network, which already is something that's very often associated with social entrepreneurship, starting with an idea and getting going. My first observation is that we have a crisis in trust and confidence in our organizations and in our economic system, which is, I think, far beyond what the financial crisis is. So I just copied a little slide here, which shows the amount of money that we have. It's a growth of the total amount of money. And to compare that with the economic growth rate that the economists tell us, that will be the equivalent. So what we see is that in the last 30 years, we have a disproportion between the amount of money which is there and the amount of real economy. And one of the observations that I have on social entrepreneurship is that probably people simply don't believe that this money has much of value behind. Of course, there's a lot of theories and explanations, but I feel a certain distrust, and social, as a first definition, probably to me, is the real part. What we see is that people come to us and they want to believe in what they are doing, and that this believing in what they are doing has nothing to do with figures which are in the accounting scheme, the turnover, the profit margins, these kind of things. And because there's no other word, they probably use this term of social. The second observation I would like to share with you is what social entrepreneurship, or I call it community as service, as we do with our kids at school, how much that is. And we heard it already from Deepa. I have the numbers of Germany. We have people who spend an average, so-called volunteers, they spend an average of 16 hours per month, many of them much more, in social work. So if we add that up on a German level, that is about 4.6 billion hours of social engagement, which is about 7.5% of the productive workforce of Germany, which is similar to the numbers we just saw from the US, or an equivalent of 3.2 million people, or 35 billion euros of turnover. And I've taken the minimum wage, which is paid in Germany, or recommended, it's not mandatory, because we see already a first problem, which is there is no accounting. So we don't have any hourly rates, we don't have productivity, but even if you take that, we are not far away from one of the leading industries that we have in Germany, like the auto industry. So, there's another button. I would call that a 5th sector in economy, and this sector simply doesn't show up in the numbers. It's not in the GDP, it's not in our bookkeeping, it doesn't show up. And what very often happens is that because it doesn't show up in the numbers, it's not taken serious. And the people who are in there are not taken serious either. So my 5 statements that I would like to enter into the discussion here is the number 1, which is, if I'm in the economy, and I think that's where we are very close to Peter Drucker, what we can learn from the social sector is there needs to be purpose. And the non-profit social entrepreneurship environment actually tells us that there is something that we do for society, there is a need that we find, and then we have the means of business to get that solved. But unless there is a justification, a sense on why we do it, we cannot run a profitable or any successful business or a growing business. And then we can translate that into customer orientation or market orientation or social need. It doesn't matter. There's a lot of matrices, but I think what is important is there has to be sense. And if we look for social entrepreneurship and we say this social means that we do have some sense, I think then it is helpful. My second statement is from the other side, from those people who are working in these social environments. Not-for-profit does not have to mean unprofitable. A lot of people say, we are not-for-profit, money is something unethical, it's bad, or something like that, and that is not good. So those people working in the field, the social field, need to adopt best business practices, because in the end, what we have learned in business is to allocate our resources to make them productive to the biggest benefit that we can get out of them. So the social sector is not beyond or outside an economic sphere where we have scarce resources, and we have to allocate them in order to achieve our objectives the best possible. And when I'm talking about social, we just heard good examples. We have people who run hospitals, schools, and these kind of things, and very often you see that they are desperately undermanaged. And the other thing that we see is that we have these volunteers, and people are being looked down upon as a volunteer. He's not really serious, he's not really doing proper things, otherwise he or she would be in business. Very often it's she, because women apparently can stand that situation better. But that is, I think, what we need to stop. And it's at the moment when I talk to the people in this social sector, they say we have to renew our voluntarism, the way of how people are working there and how they are looked at it, because otherwise we cannot recruit good people and other people to join. And that is my personal experience as well. I've been running and being in the management board of an NGO of 120,000 people, but we were seen as just volunteers. Nobody knew that we had big operations. We couldn't show our balance sheet because the balance sheet doesn't show much. When you get all the working hours for free, you don't pay for that. So there's a lot of disbalances. And my research institute at the moment, it's a limited company. So I have to be, I'm not for profit, of course, but I have to be not for loss as well. So I have to operate, I have to operate it on a daily basis. And because I'm a free scientist, I'm a real professor, I'm a free scientist, and my university says, well, you can everything, but because you're free, you cannot have a shareholder or anybody else who's telling you what you do. So I'm the shareholder, I'm the CEO, because they want me to take my decisions on my own. And people were looking down upon me. So what I like about the social entrepreneurship topic is, like, when people used to say to me, you are crazy, why are you doing that? I say, I'm not crazy, I'm a social entrepreneur. And it already sounds much better. The third message to me is, for my colleagues and myself, on the academic part. If we talk about business, we talk about profit maximization. It's an assumption. Theoretically speaking, it's an assumption. An assumption is a simplification because we want to make a model and we are not capable of dealing with other things outside the assumption. And what has happened is what I like to call a concept inversion. From having done an assumption that we can't do models which capture more than the profit maximization, we have slowly migrated it into a normative statement that companies and businesses only for profit maximization. But if you take Adam Smith, he was an ethics professor. He was not the founder, really, he's the founder of modern economy and business, but he was an ethics professor, and he said we can create value for the nation if we do this better. But it's always based on the social and ethical standards which are behind. And I think the financial crisis and our models, they do show that this assumption of profit maximization in our complex world is too rigid and we have to loosen it, and we have to describe other things, and that's why I think we are very close to what Peter Drucker was researching about. We have to get a better view, a theoretical better explanation on what the world is, what our business is, in order to find that, and I think there is where we have to develop more research projects in order to get better explanations. Now, the fourth message to me is on those people who are actually in the social environment. We cannot accept that we have a sector which has something like in the order of 7 or 8% of the economy, which is totally undermanaged, which does not take any proper reference to what we have learned on how to coordinate and how to allocate our resources. If you are working in a hospital, if we are organizing feeding of people in India, we have to make sure that we get the most benefit out of the resources that we have. And resource scarcity is one of the issues that we were dealing with. So I think we have to have that qualification campaign for social entrepreneurs that these are properly managed. That's the reason why we have that Social Entrepreneurship Academy. So finally, is social entrepreneurship a fad or it's a reality? I think it's a reality. It has ever been, but the term is a fad because if so to speak, it's a tautology. Social is already an entrepreneurship because if you just want to do profit maximization, you better go to a large corporate, you get your bonuses, and that makes you really profitable. If you're an entrepreneur, you undertake something which has to have benefit, and that's why the social is always inside the entrepreneurship. I believe that this term will disappear again after some while, but if it does a purpose that we can bridge the world of social businesses and the world of business environments, which to me are quite distinct at the moment, and if we can bring that together for the benefit of the society, then I think it has done its purpose. Thank you very much.
I will ask a few questions to the panelists and then open it up to the audience for further discussion. The first thing I would like to do is introduce Bill Liao and Johannes Weber, who have both started social ventures of their own. And I would like to welcome both of you to give your perspective. I think you're unique in that you've both founded and built your own ventures from scratch. And can you share your thoughts on why you opted for a social entrepreneurship model, and how have you made it a success or managed it to this point?
I agree that social entrepreneurship is a tautology because entrepreneurship is inherently social. Peter Drucker said that we need to treat everyone as a volunteer in an organization. We don't work for money. We work for impact. Every study on incentives shows this. For me, because there is no distinction, I'm just looking for the maximum impact. And I found that there are some amazing principles that have had huge impact in the world that have led me down a more social path. I'm curious, how many people in the audience, just hold up your hand if your livelihood depends in some way on open source complex software? You see only a few people put up your hands. Okay, keep them up. Now put up your hand if you have a smartphone. Right, you're all in the same group. Keep your hand up if you use a computer at all in any way in your life. If you're not holding your hand up by now, you've got it wrong. Now, here's the real test. How many of you can actually program a computer? Look around. There's a major disparity there. So one of the things that I look to do, and one of the things that's driven me very hard into the social, is to look at disparities. And they don't have to just be in the poorest places in the world. Our society globally functions better when we make things more efficient by erasing those disparities.
Okay. Well, I'm an entrepreneur in the financial field, and after I got my fund of fund company publicly listed, I didn't want to be like the people that were 10 years further down the road, and bought a company called Panda Investment, and we did the funds for WWF, and I thought, now this is a good opportunity to change the world. And then you end up with a portfolio of BP and Nestle and so on, and you keep defending to your pension funds why you're changing the world of these companies. And we donated from the management fee and became one of the largest donors to the WWF. And I loved what we were doing for a while, and then saw as an entrepreneur I would probably try to do philanthropy a little bit differently. And then I came across social entrepreneurship, and I met all these people, and I thought, wow, they have great business acumen. They have ethical fiber that I have not seen across entrepreneurs in the online field or in the financial world that I knew before. And it came up over and over that they're lacking money because banks won't give it to them, and venture capitalists won't give it to them. And there's like a tremendous funding gap, actually for no reason, that keeps those innovative and great ideas to scale up. And that was the only actual thing I could help with, because I've been raising funds all my life. So decided to do that, and it felt kind of supported. It didn't make any logical sense to do that. And after a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, created the Social Venture Fund in order to help a couple of social innovations to scale up across borders. And now I'm kind of addicted. And I actually loved your definition, which is not a definition, because I'm a practitioner and I feel totally limited by definitions. And I think if we, as social entrepreneurs, grow into the little larger economy. So I also have the feeling that we are like in a little aquarium, and we're all these golden and beautiful fish. And we love to be in that aquarium, but actually we're in a larger ocean. And I would love to invite some sharks to talk to us, because you know, if you get chased by a shark, you become a lot better fish. So that's why I'm here with all you sharks today.
Apropos of that, the greatest engines of change on our planet are the sharks. And so rather than be chased by a shark, I'm more interested in recruiting sharks and having them do good works alongside us, because if you can recruit the sharks, you can recruit the engines of commerce. You can achieve more than anything. I mean, we ship through 2 trillion cans of cola to every place on Earth every 3 years. That's a lot of stuff that gets moved around. That's a lot of change that can happen just from our engines of commerce, and that's just in cola drinks.
This question is to all of the panelists. We had a lot of discussion yesterday regarding making corporate decision-making more long-term. However, when you're in a social entrepreneurship venture, the concerns and the issues you're addressing are often very immediate and need to be concerned with impact. So what's your feeling on, you know, just how patient should capital be? What are some of the things that you would look at?
So, I mean, I'll start, you know, working in an organization that, as I said, is a nonprofit umbrella with a private sector element underneath it with 14 banks and an insurance company. The comment was made yesterday around venture capital, kind of the tail of it not being long enough to actually support some of the efforts that are being made to really change the world and change some of the work that we're doing. I think that's right. When I look at some of the banks that we're involved in around the world, many in Africa, 9 in Africa, China, India, the Philippines, Colombia, and so forth. Oftentimes you can do very good planning, and we do really great planning, but oftentimes, you know, when you're working in the developing world, it is not as static as it is when you're working in the United States or in Europe or other places. And so I think, to answer your question, you've got to do a great job, as we've all said, around operating these nonprofits like great businesses with a lot of structure and thought. But you have to also recognize, as you look at providing the underpinning of support for many of these ventures, that you need to have some cushion for the tough days. especially if you want to protect the clients that you're working with and the work they're doing.
Okay, and I welcome the other. Yeah.
I would probably like to make one comment on that. So I wouldn't even start with capital, because the moment that, and I would actually do what Peter Drucker told us to do. He said, like, start small, start with a good idea, go out, look and listen, and gain leadership. And the moment that you have leadership, capital comes automatically. I still believe that there's more money. You saw from my slide, there's more money than good ideas. So if you have a good idea and you do something and you want to create social change, the capital will go with you. Yeah. And that's just as a very small example, that's how we started the Social Entrepreneurship Academy. We've run it on a budget of, I think, 5,000 or 8,000 euros for 2 or 3 years. It was just an idea by the 4 directors of the centers who said, let's do it. And then there were enthusiastic people joining and doing it. I'm not here to make marketing, but of course we need money and we need funding. And if you're willing to do so, ask Dominic and he can help you. But it's the other way around. So we don't calculate on the basis of capital gains, this kind of things, but on the people who are doing it, on the idea which makes sense. And if you turn it around like that, I think it's for any company. If you provide the smartest phone that there is, people are waiting in front of your shop to get it. If you provide the right answer to a social problem, people will come and join you.
I've always struggled if you talk about social entrepreneurship and don't give an example, because then you don't know what you're talking about. And since we're one of the few funders to this organization, I would like to make a statement that as a social enterprise, you would, it's not an excuse not to perform economically, at least by our definition. And if we invest between $0.5 and $1.5 million in the beginning, we would really like to see that money back.